Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar where we'll be taking a look at the energy efficiency business opportunities in Chile. My name is Stephen Kennett and I look after the built environment and energy portfolio here at 2 Degrees. I'm delighted to welcome our presenters today. Joining us from Chile we have Carl Royce of the UK Trade and Investment, Marcelo Mina Carrasco from the Centre for Sustainability Research at the Universidad Andrés Bello, and Marcus Muller from the Chilean Energy Efficiency Agency. Also online is Pablo Galaz Esquivel, who is online to help with any questions you might have. Today's presentations will last for around 40 minutes, which will leave us with 10 minutes for questions at the end. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone that you can submit questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand of the side of the screen. If you just type in your question and press send, and then we'll wait till the end before answering as many as we can. As an aside, if you should have any technical issues during the presentations, please use the chat box on the right-hand side to send me a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So without any further delay, I'd like to hand over to Carl, who'll get us started with today's presentations. So over to you, Carl.
Hi, thanks, Stephen, and hello to those listening. My name is Carl Royce. I'm Deputy Director at UK Trade and Investment in Chile. And I also have sector responsibility for the energy sector. In Chile, energy is largely understood to be electric power. There's very little oil and gas activity. And if I advance a slide here. Quick look at where Chile is. Unique geography, very long and thin. Almost 3,000 miles from north to south. Population of 16.6 million. At the last census, which was last year. The economy is really something to shout about. 5.6% GDP growth in 2012. Expectations going forward for the next 2 or 3 years of between 4.5 and 5%. The government was actually apologetic in lowering its expectation to that. Those figures, I'm sure, we'd be delighted with in Europe. GDP at purchasing power parity per capita is the highest in Latin America at just over $18,000. Direct foreign investment, $26.4 billion in 2012. That was an excellent performance in 2012. For the first time, direct foreign investment into Chile exceeded that of going into Mexico. On a regional basis, Chile is behind only Brazil when it comes to attracting foreign investment. Inflation is very low, 1.5%. And then in a series of international rankings, Chile performs really well, especially on a regional basis. So you can see in those 5 global comparisons how well Chile is not only being close to the UK, but consistently being the best ranked country in Latin America. And then a look on this slide at the different sectors of the economy. If we start in the top left with mining, well, if it wasn't for mining, I wouldn't be speaking to you today, and you probably wouldn't be listening. Mining underpins the whole economy. Chile is the world's largest copper producer. Copper accounts for 48% of all exports, 16% of GDP, 15% of government revenue. It's not all copper. There's silver, gold, molybdenum. Lithium is a potential mining product of the future. Employment in copper is huge. The effects on the economy are, well, mining has made the economy what it is. If we move along to that picture of a rather congested motorway, that's to illustrate the concessions that the state issues in Chile. The government philosophy is to give the private sector responsibility to run just about as much as possible, and state-owned enterprises are in Chile the exception and not the rule. Motorways are one example. Water utilities are another of concessioned activities, and there are studies that estimate a further $6 billion of investment potential in concessions not yet awarded. The picture at the top right is of the port of Valparaiso, and is to illustrate foreign trade and Chile's policy towards that. Chile in the 1970s took a long, hard look at itself and decided that it was a small economy in an unfashionable neighborhood, a long way from its principal export markets. So at a time when everybody else in the region was playing with ideas of import substituting industrialization, Chile decided to focus on its competitive advantages and produce to its strengths aimed at the export market. Foreign trade, therefore, had to be as easy as possible. Chile wanted access to its export markets, and in return it gave free access to its domestic market. Also, foreign investment. In Chile, foreign investors have full equality before the law. They wanted to be the easiest place to do business with. Whether it is easiest or not, well, it's a subjective decision. But going back to the previous point about foreign direct investment, Chile's done a very good job of attracting investors to the country. If it's not the country in the world with the most free trade agreements, it's certainly one of the countries in the world with the most free trade agreements. For UK companies, the agreement that matters is the one between the European Union and Chile, which sets most tariffs at zero and promises to reach zero in the near future on those products where it is not already zero. This doesn't necessarily put the UK at an advantage compared to other countries, simply because of the volume of free trade agreements. You'll find that countries such as China, Australia, Japan, South Korea, the NAFTA Association of North America, APEC of the Pacific, the European Free Trade Agreement, they've all got free trade agreements with Chile. Just about the only trading bloc which Chile is not a full member of is, ironically enough, its own local Mercosur bloc of the southern cone of South America. Chile is an associate member and not a full member, because full membership would oblige it to actually raise its import tariffs to levels which its neighbors consider to be discounted. In the middle left, we have a picture there illustrating the wine trade. This is one of the more emblematic and best-known exports of Chile. Total exports were something like $1.8 billion in 2012. The center picture is of the part of Santiago where I'm speaking to you from, and it's to show the urban population characteristic of Chile. 87% of the population in last year's census were classified as urban. Santiago itself has got a population of about 5 million people, so that's 30% of the whole country. And to the right, the salmon and trout industry. Chile is the second largest salmon producer in the world. It's secondly to Norway. Exports were about $2.9 billion in 2012, and it's a big employment generator. And then energy. We have a picture there at the bottom of a coal plant. There's two main power grids in Chile, one in the far north of the country with approximately 4,000 megawatts installed capacity, and it's supplying the mining industry. 95% of power demand in the northern grid is industrial. And then the other principal grid covers the much larger area from the northern boundary down to the city of Puerto Montt. There's approximately just over 13,000 megawatts installed capacity, and a demand schedule. Well, the demand is 90% residential. Sorry, the demand that grid serves 90% of the population, I should say. Although in the northern grid there is a tiny bit of renewable energy, for statistical purposes, the northern grid is 100% thermoelectric, while the other one, the other grid called the central grid, is about 65% thermoelectric, just over 30% hydro, and the remainder in non-conventional renewable energies. Up until 2004, Chile had a really good deal regarding energy. It made the most of its hydroelectric resource coming from large-scale generation projects in the Andes and buying very cheap natural gas by pipeline from Argentina. Then in 2004, because of supply problems of its own, Argentina said that it wouldn't increase gas exports to levels any higher than those in place at the time. And over the next 2 or 3 years, the situation evolved into Argentina not selling Chile any gas at all. Chile, from an energy perspective, was pretty much brought to its knees. It managed to keep the lights on through recurring diesel, and then brought the situation under more manageable control by building 2 LNG regasification terminals, the first of which was in fact the first in the southern hemisphere. With those gas LNG plants now supplying demand, coal has come back as a baseload power source. Both LNG terminals are considering expanding. And in parallel to that, large-scale hydro development has run into difficulties through better organized community opposition. This has all resulted in the bubble of cheap energy bursting definitively. And while consumers were initially happy to get expensive energy as opposed to none, this in the middle of the last decade, a few energy-intensive companies actually went bust because of the higher costs. Everybody is now trying to reduce their costs, or trying to manage their costs so that they don't increase as much as they otherwise would. This is leading to more interest in not only non-conventional renewable energy, but also energy efficiency. And it's not only because of a cost basis. Chile, being an exporter primarily of commodities, has to try and differentiate its produce as much as possible. And one way of doing this is by demonstrating that electricity production and consumption is environmentally friendly. This is as important to consumer products such as wine as it is to industrial products such as copper. Energy efficiency, we're also seeing a drive for it through Chile being the regional base for many multinational companies. These companies seek to demonstrate in Chile their best global practice, which in many cases is above and beyond what the Chilean market norms are. Energy is we've got elections coming up in 2 weeks here. Energy is a big item on the agenda. Simply as well, which party proposes to do what? There is the result of the economic growth predicted for Chile and the associated power demand. There are estimates that installed capacity would have to double by 2026 and triple by 2035. Simply providing enough power of whatever shape or form is a huge challenge, and this has become more accentuated given the government's desire to make energy cheaper and cleaner at the same time. So with the scale of challenges faced in Chile, it was quite a surprise when last year the president announced that his number one priority in energy policy was a 12% energy efficiency target. This 12% was to be achieved by 2020 on a 2010 business as usual comparison, and is equivalent to more or less 1,100 megawatts of less installed capacity. So although that was unexpected, it's been extremely welcome from the point of view of the energy efficiency community and has already been embraced by parts of the private sector. The cost reduction possibilities, the chance to claim green credentials, have seen many companies subscribing to the LEED certification into ISO 50001. Estimates of market potential in LEED alone, assuming half the U.S. growth rate, are $2.5 billion a year of investment in residential sector sustainable construction in Chile, with a further $600 million in non-commercial buildings. The purpose of my presentation here has been to give you an introduction into Chile, the information that I provide, the information that the next speakers will provide, and also the background information available on the 2 Degrees website will hopefully prompt some of you to explore further the possibilities in the Chilean market. And this is an area where UK Trade and Investment can offer you all practical help in the provision, for example, of background information, of identifying potential partners and clients, of making introductions and assisting into market entrance. So hoping that you'll forgive that corporate plug of mine, and I invite you to take note of the contact details on this slide and to get in touch, and we can talk in the future about further assistance. So at that, I'd like to hand over to the next speaker.
Great, thank you for that, Carl. So we'll now hand over to Marcelo. So over to you, Marcelo.
Okay, thank you. I guess, okay, I'll post. So I was going to, I'll be real quick because I have a lot of slides and a lot of ground to cover. The this is a talk that I have. I'll breeze through some of the slides, but mostly the most important thing is for you to have the information available for future reference. I'll give out a lot of information. So sometimes you can see the Andes Mountains in some clear days, but unfortunately, a lot of our future challenges lie within the mix of the environment and energy. So I'll speak to that effect. So then, overall, there's a increasing demand for energy. This has to go in because of the increased intensity of the energy use in mining, for example. You're going to have lower and lower grades of copper being extracted, which demands you to move a lot more material. Also, there's a growing demand in the commercial and residential sector, and I'll focus on that sector using some of the research that we've been doing for this project called the MAPS program, which is funded by the UK's Climate Development Knowledge Network and through the UN Development Program. So we have expensive energy costs, and I'll speak to that. But overall, it means that there's little incentive to change, because there's around 4 big players who have some interest. Who have generation in different aspects, some thermal, some hydro. But basically, the marginalist model many times leads them to be paid very high energy costs for investments that have already been paid for. Therefore, there isn't much of an incentive to change, and so you see mining sector, you see the residential sector, commercial sectors struggling to try to reduce their energy costs, and so there's an incentive for energy efficiency. Also, there's mega projects, as you can see, have been having large challenges for the communities. Most of these are actually not well formulated projects, therefore they could have been avoided. But this rejection has spilled to some renewable projects, and you have to take that into consideration always. So I've been doing some work with this MAPS initiative, and these are some results that we're doing, sort of a little preview of what the final study is going to be like. So we're projecting our energy use and our emissions for the future. So as you can see, there's a lot of room for growth for the commercial sector, as we have a sector that has been growing, the commercial sector in energy use, in 10% per year, and the growth rate of the gross product for the commercial sector has also been growing upwards of 8%, mostly around 30% higher than the global GDP for Chile. So you can see there's a large room for growth for supermarkets and for malls, and basically we're replacing the old mom and pop store that didn't have air conditioning to new climatized installations. And you can see also that we're going to grow in the amount of homes that we have. Our population is pretty much growing very slowly, almost to the level of a developed country. But as our income increases, we're going to have less people living at homes. So we're going to go down from 4 people per home today to around 2.5 people per home in the future. Therefore, that will account for the increase. And so here we're looking at, for example, in the blue, we're looking at the dark blue, the central region, the southern region in the light blue, and the northern region, the number of homes in the green. So you can see where the populations are being spread. Mostly the people live in the central south region, and much smaller population in the north, where you can see the demand is much more industrial in nature. In the residential sector, there's a big growth demand for the future, as we're projecting. People already have TVs, have many artifacts, almost 100% coverage of TVs, radios, and different things we've done through our relationship to the Chilean Chamber of Construction. But what's going on in the future is, as people have higher income, they will use more energy, because today most homes in Chile are heated, and if we follow the patterns of other countries, we'll either address this issue with some reduce the heating demand through insulation, or as our tradition has already shown, we're probably going to be using a lot of energy because our homes are not very well insulated, even though there's new codes for energy efficiency for new residences from starting in 2007, and I think these are going to be reviewed in the near future. And if we look what's going on with the Chilean populace and what they think about these investments, overall, you're going to see that, for example, there's a majority of the people are willing to invest in renewable energy and are willing to pay more for renewable energy. We've done this study multiple times with different companies helping us out in this, and we're seeing that this green awakening that Chile had in 2011, with some protest being spawned due to the rejection for large hydroelectric projects, is something that was foreseen, as you have a lot of people willing to do some things for the environment, and you can see that in that sense, clearly the most supported type of energy is solar energy. So, considering that, when in a little while ago, Amory Lovins came in to Chile, and he's wrote books like Reinventing Fire or Natural Capitalism, and I had the opportunity to talk to him. And he for the first time spoke to me of a type of energy that I think is really going to be very successful in Chile, which is going to be distributed energy. So there's large opportunities there. I'll show you some of the cases for that. So overall, solar energy, as you can see, has gotten cheaper and cheaper, and there's across the world, new energy is mostly renewable in nature. Now we're looking at in Chile the investments that are considered to be in the pipeline are upwards of $10 billion, maybe $15 billion in solar PV systems, which some of the detractors of renewable energy say are more speculative projects than reality, but as the large conventional systems are being rejected by the environmental authorities or by the courts, well, this means that these projects are more and more probable to occur. Now, if we look in the sense of what's going on in the world, we're seeing that the new energy, around 53% of new energy installed capacity in the U.S. is going to be renewable. This is also something very similar in Europe. Well, Chile is going to have that number this year, as upwards of 150 to 200 megawatts of solar PV systems are going to be installed, and a couple hundred solar wind turbines are going to be installed. And if we look at what the Ministry of Energy considers to be the future, they could see a future installed capacity between 50 to 70% in the north of Chile to be renewable, both solar photovoltaic, concentrated solar, geothermal in a lesser degree, and wind power for the north, which is the high demanding due to the mining operations. Now, the interesting thing about energy use in the north is that the difference with Europe or with the U.S. is that you do have the energy demand matching where the solar opportunities are, so that cuts down some of the transmission costs required for these projects. Now, if we look at what happened in 2012, there's a project, large one, 2,300 megawatt coal-fired project that was stopped by the courts, and many people were crying that there were going to be increased energy costs. But what's going to happen probably is going to be a mix of new natural gas and renewable in the next coming years. In 2 years, some residential and commercial client regulation tariffs are going to be reviewed because the contracts expire with the generators, and many people say that this will be causing an increase of 30 to 50% of the energy cost at home. Therefore, but most probably, though, we'll have new energy to be liquid LNG terminals with combined cycle natural gas plants, And as you can see, this is a path that probably in the UK is something that's going on. You can see in the US this also is going to be going on, and many people have the hope that since the US has decreased their emissions for the first time in many years, and in the energy sector it's at their 20-year low, well, there maybe in 2014 we'll have a binding climate mitigation agreement. So this also adds something to the equation, because if the U.S. goes to a climate treaty, then that means that Chile will probably have to join. So if we look, this is the model that I work with from the people from Castilla Ingeniería, which are projecting the renewable energy, the energy cost through a simulation of the energy system, and you can see that without any changes, Chile will reach around 18% renewable energy in the northern region, as is, business as usual, and around 10% in the southern region. And this has led many people to start supporting and start thinking that renewable energy might be an opportunity. So right now, the presidential candidates all promise a large contribution to new energy to be renewable, up to 30% by 2030 by the leading candidates. Now, if we look at this, what this means for energy cost, this will probably drive the cost down. There's a exercise that Fundación Chile did, in which brought together the generators, the distributors, some universities, and some NGOs, and looking at what the energy cost would be for the future, simulating them. And what happened is that, in fact, this renewable energy goal probably will cause energy prices to drop based on the marginalist model. Well, if you look at what's going on with residential PV in Chile, right now we have, as you guys know, a cost. The cost that's most important is the installed capacity the dollars per watt installed, because other variables are dependent on the location. So I did a small study to show you some of the opportunities with distributed generation in Chile. So some updates in 2013 in October. We just recently approved a renewable energy mandate with 20% by 2025. Also, March 2012, net billing regulation was installed, with some initial implementations would actually lead you to be paid less for the energy that you inject at a residential scale, which will probably be changed to a one-to-one payment with a true net metering system. So hopefully that will be going online next year. And if we could project the solar energy systems, and I'm going to show you some of the internal rates of return for the future. So you can see, for example, there's something interesting here. First off, in northern Chile, the energy is expensive, and the capacity capacity is pretty high for the north, whereas in the south it's not bad sun. Actually, most of Germany's energy developments, and probably the UK's energy developments on solar PV, have irradiances that are lower than the southern part of Chile, and the central part of Chile has low energy costs and pretty good sun. So if you look at the internal rates of return, we're looking at, they fluctuate between 8% for the central region right now, as is, with a $2.8 per watt installed for solar PV at a residential scale. And we're looking at projections of up to 60% for the northern region and up to 28% for the southern region, for the central region of Chile. So we'll have some good opportunities in the near future for this, and we're waiting for this to pick up. If we look at what the Grid Parity Monitor shows, which is an initiative by these different actors, we're seeing that Chile has reached, with a regulatory framework that would probably be better, but has reached grid parity. That means that it's cheaper to buy energy from your own generation than from the grid. Here's some examples of solar radiances and different plant factors and costs for the south of Chile, north of Chile, central Chile. You can look at, and I have this on some op-ed that I wrote. Also, solar PV on rooftops is a good idea. Actually, so I'm working on some projects to get the large empty space to be used for these purposes in Chile. Right now, and not selling for self-use, but actually to sell at the spot market. So if we look at President Bachelet's, who's probably going to be the president of the next year, there's that 30% goal, but there's also some support for solar thermal and state loans for solar PV, and we have a carbon tax to be considered for the future. So if you look at the number of homes that could have solar PV, based on the model that we did, we're thinking of maybe 2 million, by 2050. I know it's a long projection. If we look at the installed capacity, we're talking about a market that will peak at $160 million per year in installations. And if we finally have some conclusions, the grid parity has reached Chile, where we have a regulatory framework that actually has to work for simplifying these type of projects. The ESCO model is working, but there's some strong information barriers to be overcome. We need to overcome the barriers on financing, but Chile will be the first market with unsubsidized solar to work. And some other info, energy costs in Chile are roughly 16 cents to 35 US cents per kilowatt hour. There's some demand for cheap, clean heating because that's where the energy demand will come in the future. ESCO works at large scale. Commercial solar PV is not profitable. It actually is better to sell at a wholesale scale than to use it for your own use. And that's some referential energy costs for LPG in dollars per kilogram and natural gas in dollars per kilogram. So that's it. And if you have any questions, I'll be taking them at the end of the talk.
Great. Thank you very much, Marcelo. So great insight there into what's happening. So I'm now going to hand over to Marcus, who's going to take a look at energy efficiency opportunities. So over to you, Marcus.
Yes, hello, my name is Marcus Müller. I can see my slide until now. Yes, okay. My name is Marcus Müller. I work as an integrated expert from the German government within the Chilean Energy Efficiency Agency in the industrial sector. First, I can't. Okay. The agenda of my presentation. First, I would have liked to give an introduction to the economic context, but Carl already gave that, so I will skip that. I'll give you a little introduction to the energy context of Chile, an institutional context for energy efficiency in Chile, and finally I tell you a little bit more about the role and the activities of the Chilean Energy Efficiency Agency. The data of the economic context Carl already detailed. I only want to once again repeat that we have a very good context to make business in Chile. And starting with the energy context, as already said, in Chile we have very high energy prices. Compared to the other OECD countries, Chile is number 5 in electricity prices in industry, and number 11 related to residential energy prices. Compared to Great Britain, is in number 14 related to industrial energy prices, and in number 18 related to residential electricity prices. So for energy efficiency, obviously high energy prices are good circumstances to make business in energy efficiency. Furthermore, in comparison to the other OECD countries, Chile wasn't able until now to decouple the GDP growth or the energy consumption from GDP. Over a very long period of time, the growth of energy demand and growth of GDP have been parallel. We may see since beginning of 2007, 2008, a little tendency to have to get to a decoupling the economy from the energy demand. But until now, that's really a very at the very beginning. On the other hand, the institutional context for energy efficiency in Chile. We have an energy ministry that was founded in 2010. In the same year, the Chilean Energy Efficiency Agency was founded. So we see the agency is a very young institution. Although there was a predecessor, the National Energy Efficiency Program, but really as an own institution, the agency is very young, and since it's starting in 2010, it has been in the first years really a challenge to implement the structure of the agency and setting the goals. On the other hand, energy efficiency is the first and most important pillar of the National Energy Strategy that was published in 2012, and that gives obviously a very solid ground for energy efficiency. That is, it gives it a very high importance, and this is communicated through all the country. Which is the role and what are the activities of the Chilean Energy Efficiency Agency? We have mainly three technical areas that are related to the main energy consumption sectors. I just want to mention I am working in the industry and mining sector, and industry and mining are responsible for about 64% of the electricity consumption in the country. In Chile, we are consuming around 60 terawatt hours of electricity annually. That is around about 10-12% of the energy consumption in Germany. I don't know the numbers of Great Britain, but so you can see it is not that big market, but due to the high prices, it is a very attractive market. What are we doing in the industry and mining sector? We have a program for capacity building related really to aspects important for industry and mining. We do have training for energy audits, energy efficiency in thermal installations, energy efficiency in electric installations, and we are going to implement a training program for combined heat and power. On the other hand, the industry and mining sector has a program to co-finance energy audits. For this we have constructed a online platform that permits us to document all the results of the audits in a standardized manner, to be able to do a follow-up and to identify interesting projects for the future, and where necessary, this is the first point, to get in contact where that was missing capital or where is missing capacity to implement the measures, to create further on a platform that brings those two aspects together. On the one hand, the identified measures, and on the other hand, interested investors. Furthermore, we have a program for project development that, after the audit, permits the consultants that are registered in a database of the agency to go on and make more detailed studies related to the identified measures to make the basic engineering for the identified energy efficiency measures. And finally, in the industrial sector, we have a energy management system program, or program to promote the implementation of energy management systems following the ISO 50001 standard. Until this year, this program was a pilot program that was operated, or where the agency got in contact with the different companies that are interested in implementing ISO 50001. But in the future, we are foreseeing to operate this program by consultants, to get the massification of the implementation of ISO 50001 in industrial companies. In the transport sector, there are various programs related to private transport, to public transport, and to freight transport. I won't detail that too much now in this instance, and go on to the building sector, or where we're operating various programs to promote energy efficiency in new buildings, energy efficiency in existing buildings, and there especially we're working together with municipalities or governmental other governmental institutions to improve energy efficiency of these buildings. And on the other hand, we are also having a capacity building program for the building sector. Now, having the three technical areas that try to identify energy efficiency opportunities in the different sectors, we also have three areas to attack various barriers for energy efficiency that are existing generally. On the one hand, we have an area which is focusing on education, but not that, but especially on general education. Not that, as I mentioned before, we have capacity building programs for the different sectors. The educational program is more focusing on the university education and general education. On the other hand, we have an area that is trying to promote measurement and verification, because we identified that in many cases there's missing confidence in the energy efficiency measures to assure and to strengthen the confidence that the identified energy efficiency measures really accomplish the numbers. We are implementing a support to do measurement and verification. And finally, we have an area that is dedicated to business development, to bring together finally the identified energy efficiency measures with the investors. If you see this as a whole picture, you can compare this perhaps to growing fruit. The education sector is meant to prepare a fertile ground for energy efficiency. The three sector-related areas are looking to identify good projects that are the seeds for growing energy efficiency, while measurement and verification is trying to while business development is trying to irrigate those plants, and finally measurement and verification will help to protect the plants and will be able really finally to measure the energy saved. Also, every year we are organizing an energy efficiency fair. Next year, this fair will be organized between the 22nd and 24th of October, and we all invite you all to participate in this fair to promote your offer you have related to energy efficiency. In the last years, this fair has been growing and has been quite successfully. Finally, I want to state that on the one hand, we have stable economic conditions and a stable economic development that offer us an excellent environment for investments. Secondly, we have very high external dependency on energy resources and have very high energy prices in Chile. That is combined with the rising energy demand in the future. Thus, energy efficiency is needed for the country and is also a very good business opportunity. Finally, there is an established institutional framework for energy efficiency in the future, and there's a great commitment related to energy efficiency in the politics and also in the private sector. And finally, the agency is focused to promote the energy efficiency market, and we have a capable, dynamic, and well-organized structure to make energy efficiency happen in the future. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please contact me, and I'll be happy to be in contact with you. Hello?
Apologies for that, the line dropped there. So thank you, Marcus. We'll now go into the question and answer session. And Carl, maybe we can begin with you. So there's a couple of questions come in. One is, are there opportunities if you are a smaller firm? And another one where somebody's asking, who are the main international players in regards to contracting in Chile?
With regard to contracting to what, sorry?
I think with regard to installing renewables and energy efficiency measures within, I guess, the built environment and also the industrial sector.
To answer the second question first, I've yet to see contractors being used specifically to install energy efficiency projects. What I have seen are the owners of buildings seeking to incorporate in the construction of new buildings rafts of energy efficient measures. So the decision would be taken by the architect and asset owner, and the actual installation would go in through the local construction company, if that answer makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Going back to the first question, are there opportunities for small companies? Absolutely. What you have to have is you have to demonstrate that your solution is the lowest cost over the life cycle of the project, of the product. And if you can do that and get past the frustrating fascination with the purchase cost and demonstrate that purchase cost is not everything, that there is a lifetime cost associated with the project, and if your lifetime costs are lower, then regardless of your company size, I would say yes, there are opportunities here. Chile being so far from the UK, the companies will be well advised to deal with a local partner. The partner is probably going to be a distributor. If the local partner is a large company, it might actually be a user, but the way that most small UK companies enter the market is through a relationship with a local distributor.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Carl. Marcelo, there's a question here for you around renewables, and somebody's asking, is there a lot of appetite for on-site generation amongst the manufacturing and commercial sectors and around the sort of medium scale? And is there a particular technology which is coming to the fore? I mean, I know you touched on PV quite a bit in your presentation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so some people have been, I don't know if I have the audio. Am I on? Did you guys hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So, for example, right now there's some good push for cogeneration for the industrial sector. The industrial sector or the commercial sector will pay energy bill that will consist of 3 items, which will be energy, peak demand, and peak demand at the peak hour. So the commercial generation for buildings could be cost effective, but for example, for industrial use, it probably won't be as effective because the energy generation for PV doesn't match the energy demand. But for since residential sector pays one tariff that integrates all those costs of peak demand, etc., then that sector does work well. So what I've been looking at is that commercial scale solar PV does not work very well because they pay, the guys pay for energy per kilowatt hour. They pay much cheaper than residential, which has all this integrated cost into it. Therefore, the business case there is for using these large extensions of different warehouses, etc., or malls, to sell actually to the spot market. The spot market in the central region has fluctuated between $150 to $200, and all the alarmists say that this will be even higher in the future. Therefore, for example, if you do hit a patch of maybe 2-3 years of high energy costs, and you sell at the spot market, you can make a pretty decent return on investment. But the banks won't let you borrow money for that because they won't acknowledge that variability, or they won't give you money to sell the spot market. So it's more like more for the more like the more risky investments. Now, for homes, I guess one of the big things that has to be going on in homes, what we have to do is be looking into installing these systems fast, and there's many opportunities there. The market is huge. There's a lot of I've heard, for example, this one guy from Scotland who had moved to Chile for retirement, and he got his first energy bill. He lived in a rural community which had around 40 cents per kilowatt hour, and he said, "I'm coming out of retirement. I want to work on this." And what he started doing is he started getting this niche, which is solar pumping for agricultural use. And he's been killing that market. He's been doing very well because solar PV will always beat diesel generation for pumping when you're talking about isolated locations. So therefore, that's what the opportunity that I see as clearest. Cogeneration, there's a big push from the natural gas utilities to support that. Solar PV at a residential scale, solar PV at a commercial scale, probably looking into less than 3 megawatt installed capacity to sell at the spot market. Some companies do consider solar PV for their own energy use, even though it's not that profitable. But it gives it an added value for their they get a lot more money out of the marketing from that than what they're actually saving energy. But in any case, it's not giving away money. Now, the biggest issue that I've seen is that, for example, my university signed an ESCO agreement recently, and we're going to have a ESCO provider of solar PV. But the main issue that I've seen is that the municipalities, for example, they have very strict budgets. So therefore, for example, they could only use stuff for some funding for capital costs, some for operational costs. So therefore, the easiest way to package this is for them to actually be spending the same amount of money on energy they would otherwise, but on the payment for their service from the ESCO type model. So I would actually start looking at that. Despite the energy costs being high, despite the returns of investment being high, still the nearsightedness of some of the investors cause a 5-year or 4-year payback to be too far down the road, therefore not really being a good opportunity. I mean, not seeing it as an opportunity because they're thinking of a 1-year, 2-year payback, not 5 years. So that's the main issue I've had, despite the great opportunities that I see on paper. The information deficit is something that causes these investments not to be carried out in full.
Great, thanks, Marcelo. So I'm conscious of time, but we'll try and squeeze in 2 more questions. I think we've got enough time. Marcus, there's a question here. Somebody's asking about ISO 50001, and they're asking whether or not that's a well-established standard in Chile, and is it something that people are familiar with and using?
Yes. Well, in terms of Southern America, we are leading the number of ISO-certified companies. So we, as agency, were on the one hand very active on the ISO committee that has and on the other hand, with our activities, we really were promoting energy management systems. Obviously, and generally speaking, energy management was not very established until now, but the ISO standard helped us to really create a common language to define what is energy management, because if you're talking about energy management, very frequently the people understand on energy management only energy cost management, and not an energy management system that leads you to continuous improvement of your efficiency. But yes, the standard, I think, is very well known. There are many companies that are beginning to evaluate the benefits of implementing an energy management system according to ISO 50001.
Great, thank you, Marcus. And Carl, just a final question here. Someone's asking, what's the process for showing interest in projects, and is there a sort of acceptable route to market?
Energy efficiency projects are 99% certain going to come from the private sector. And so the way to get into the private sector is to present your products and capacities to the relevant companies. The big companies will have their invitations to tender for people to participate. It's unlikely that a British company is going to be on that invitation list. So you'd have to come here in the first place to demonstrate your capacity, to talk to people, to educate and to identify, I would advise, a local partner. And then once that operation is up and running, it will be the local partner who would use his network of contacts to access the opportunities. Participating from Britain, yes, there are companies that do that in the energy sector, but they're building on their contact network. There is a notice board of every single public sector purchase. It's a website called Chile Compra. I can give details to anybody who wants to look at that. But what you'll find on that are opportunities in Spanish only, and often restricted, not explicitly, but we have found that there are restrictions which limit the opportunity to Chilean companies. For example, you have to provide your local ID number. UK companies don't have that. We've brought those concerns of ours to the attention of Chilean authorities, and they are taking steps to reduce these kind of accidental obstacles. But by and large, the opportunities available are going to be from the private sector and will depend on an effective contact network and the effective presentation of value of the product or service. Brilliant.
Thank you for that, Carl. So that's all we've got time for now, but I'd just like to thank Carl, Marcelo and Marcus for their time today and for getting through so many questions. And also thank you to everyone who's joined us for this webinar. Just to remind you, a recording of the webinar and the presentation slides will be archived on the 2 Degrees platform. So I hope you found today useful and interesting, and you'll be able to join us for further webinars soon. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right.